it is quite literally very, very possible, but most likely not. What's going on, y'all? Soul here, and welcome back to my story mode. So, at this point in time, we've had Sonic X Shadow Generations for the better part of a month now, or at least it's getting very close. It is now very late November. Like a lot of others, I've had nothing but generally positive things to say about the game. I think that the story was phenomenal, I thought that the gameplay was excellent, I thought that the game looked beautiful and was very polished, and even though it was a very, very tiny package, it was still pretty solid. It was a very amazing experience that I can see myself coming back to time and time and time and time again. There's absolutely no arguments from me and plenty of others that Shadow Generations is one of the best Sonic things we have ever received. Ever. However though, of course, after a little bit of time has passed, there are a lot of things that start to rise in terms of questions, right? I would sit there thinking to myself, well, you know, we probably could have had a little more of this, and maybe this could have been a thing, and so on and so forth, and then the thoughts just kind of spiral. Now, granted, this is not me saying that these things not being here is necessarily a bad thing. They did what they could with the time allotted, and they did a phenomenal job. However, there are some things that I have listed here that I do think is confusing that isn't present within Shadow Generations. Again, let's make it clear. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and settle on this now. I think Shadow Generations is one of my top 3 to 5 favorite Sonic games of all time, probably within the top 3. I don't know. We gotta play more Sonic Riders. If we're counting spin-offs too, but if we're not counting spin-offs, I don't know. It's definitely a debate to be had. However, much like any game, and especially within the Sonic space, it's not perfect, and that is totally okay. Nothing needs to be perfect. There is no such thing as the concept of perfect. However, I feel like a couple of the things that I have listed here could have gotten it pretty damn close. As you have seen from the title and thumbnail and heard from my miniature explanation, we're going to be questioning why some of these things were missing from Shadow Generations. Now, the first major thing here, and the most obvious thing that's missing, that everybody and their mamas were questioning, especially considering the fact that Doom was the primary antagonist of this game, why were there no Shadow the Hedgehog levels? Of course, when we say Shadow the Hedgehog, we're specifically referencing Shadow the Hedgehog 05. It's kind of hard to ignore something like Shadow the Hedgehog when the main antagonist that game introduced to us is very much present within this game. He's the antagonist of Shadow Generations. But nothing from Shadow 05 is acknowledged at all outside of Doom, and that's very strange. I'm cheating a little bit here because it's been a long time since I've played 05 and I don't remember all of the stages off the top of my head, but looking at it here, it's weird that we don't have something like Westopolis as a stage. It's strange that we don't have Lost Impact or Cosmic Fall or anything like that. We're missing so many potential stages that could have been amazing as 3D stages. Yeah, it's really cool to reference things like Rail Canyon from Sonic Heroes, and of course, I'm more than game Kingdom Valley. And as a matter of fact, Kingdom Valley is my favorite stage in Shadow Generations. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And also Sonic 06, but we're not talking about that. However though, it's very weird that we got references to Sonic 06 again, Sonic Forces, and Sonic Heroes again, before we even got an original stage from Shadow the Hedgehog. Not even one. I completely understand that all of these levels in their own ways are very iconic, but you're gonna tell me that we're gonna reference Sunset Heights, something that barely applies to Shadow all that much, as opposed to literally any of the stages that were present in 05? I think that's very strange in my personal opinion. Again, don't get me wrong, I love the stages, they were well developed, they were super pretty, and I'm very happy that they're here. However, you take a look at something like Sunset Heights and you're like, oh man, the stage was not moving like this in Forces, and then you go back to Forces and it makes you upset, as opposed to something like Air Fleet, which is actually kinda raw. And they had every opportunity to take Air Fleet and turn it into something really cool with the boost formula, and we just didn't for some reason, which, an odd decision, but I guess we can't really say much about it because what's done is done. But I do think that it is very strange that that entire game that is almost serves as something of a prequel to Shadow Generations when you really think about it, because this is their way. Shadow Generations is their way of acknowledging Shadow 05, the original Shadow the Hedgehog, where we got introduced to Doom, where we got introduced to the Black Arms, where we got introduced to Abe and everything like that. This is their way of acknowledging that and solidifying his past. That game is his past. That is part of his story. That is him confronting everything that has to do with himself. Him confronting the fact that he's something of an alien and everything like that. And then Shadow Generations is kind of the culmination of that. Him coming to terms with everything that's already happened and him accepting that. But we're just gonna ignore it. Alright man, cool, whatever. Of course, you could also make similar arguments for Sonic Generations, considering the fact that none of the storybook levels are mentioned or acknowledged in any way, shape, or form, not even Sonic Rush or anything like that. It is odd. It is odd. But regardless, while it is unfortunate, you know, I guess it is what it is. I would have loved to see some Shadow 05 levels, though. I feel like that really would have hit home if we had Westopolis as, like, the last stage, considering the fact that it was the first stage in Sonic, or Shadow the Hedgehog 05. I feel like that would have been just a real roundabout situation going on there. After that, of course, these two things are very strange to me. These two things being one package consecutively, right? Starting with no Infinite acknowledgement at all. The entire reason, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't played Sonic Forces, but I have seen the story, I've read up on everything and all that, just to, you know, at least keep up with it. I just couldn't justify buying that game. But the entire reason for Shadow's presence in that game and him having a DLC was to solidify the fact that he was part of the cause of Infinite's anger. Infinite is as powerful as he wanted to get stronger because of Shadow. Why is Infinite not a rival fight? Why is he not a boss present in this game? Especially because we acknowledge Sunset Heights. We acknowledge Sonic Forces. So it's very strange to me that Infinite's character is not even acknowledged. I mean, I get that people feel some type of way about him, but, you know, I don't know. I think it is very strange that in Sonic Generations, which, you know, was, you know, widely well received, they are fully aware of the boss fight, or the rival fights, excuse me, that are so prominent in the original game, because that is the only way for you to progress in the game, is to go through the rival fights. You have to fight Metal Sonic, you have to fight Shadow, and you have to fight Silver. Okay, fine, that's cool. Again, we could definitely use some more rival fights in the original game. Knuckles could have been really, really cool. Blaze would have been tough. But on the side of Shadow, I get that he doesn't have as many rivals, but I feel like Infinite could have fit well here if we were acknowledging him at all. If we're acknowledging Forces at all, we may as well have tossed Infinite in there. And in a similar vein, Emerl. I mean, maybe this was just me getting my hopes up a little bit. I didn't really think about it too much after, like, during the fact, like, while I was playing it, it didn't even cross my mind that Emerl wasn't even there, right? It's very strange. Or is it Emerl or Gemerl? I get the two mixed up, but regardless, his presence in Shadow the Dark Beginnings made me believe that he had a more important presence than we were led to believe, especially because his lore was so hidden in Sonic Battles, something that not a lot of people really looked that heavily into and acknowledged much as far as the canon goes. Nobody was really looking into Sonic Battle like that. However, that story, that little story, acknowledged Emerald Gemeral's presence and made that thing a threat, man. That thing was dastardly throwing hands with Shadow bar for bar, man. Back to back. All combos, no introductions, nothing. It was straight hands. And I'm sitting here thinking like, dude, that would be a phenomenal rival fight. Nowhere to be seen. Not even acknowledged in the game. Very strange, right? I don't know. It just feels like they were setting that up and it kind of led nowhere. And that's really unfortunate because we haven't really acknowledged this character or, you know, this design or anything like that since Sonic Battle, or maybe Sonic Rivals, maybe? I don't know. It's been a long time regardless, and it's just very, very odd to me that we just get no Emerald Gemerl acknowledgement whatsoever. Cool, man. Guess there's nothing we can do about that. I don't know. I think it would have been more than fair for Shadow to have some rival fights. If Sonic could get 3, he could at least get 1 or 2. Infinite or Gemerl would have been fine, I think. And speaking of rival fights, it is odd. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the way that they did it here. They showed it from Shadow's perspective because he was supposed to lose. I get it. He canonically lost that fight. That's the only way that they were able to escape time space, was because, you know, Sonic got that emerald from him. What we didn't know from the outside in is that for a majority of that story in Sonic Generations, we were holding the fake emerald, right? So it is really cool that we saw that from Shadow's perspective, and they turned it into a straight up cutscene instead of like an actual rival fight. But I don't know, I feel like it still could have been something of a rival fight. They could have just limited our Doom powers, and then at the end of the fight, we could have seen that little scene where he couldn't use the Doom powers at all, and then we would have been like, oh, okay, this is him holding back because he feels like it's cheating. Gotcha, that makes sense. But I don't know, I feel like they definitely could have done more with that, but it is what it is. That, of all the things that I have listed here, that's definitely like a minute issue that I have. It's definitely just like it would have been cool, but it is fine the way that it is. I'm just being nitpicky at that point. My next thing, and this is probably one of the bigger issues that I have, is that Omega does nothing. Like, literally, he's just there for no reason. At the beginning of the story, just pops up. Him and Shadow kind of acknowledge that they're both in white space in the same cutscene, and then you talk to Omega throughout the course of the game to see the different dialogue and things like that, which is cool and dandy and all. But that's it. Omega does nothing. He doesn't even go with them at the end of the game. Omega is just present for no reason. No boss fight, no rival fight, and you know, I'm just gonna jump right into this because it kind of falls into the same category here, but not even a side quest with Omega. Why not? I feel like one of the bigger aspects of Sonic Generations was those mini games where you're, you know, doing all these side quests with Sonic's friends to, you know, get the gate keys and stuff like that. The gate keys in this aspect are legitimately, they're cool challenges. Please do not get that twisted. These challenges are fun, they're awesome, and they're well designed. However, I mean, one of the bigger aspects of this story is Maria trying to get Shadow to realize that he is cared about, that he has friends, and that this angry version of himself, it's not him, and that he has people that care about him and doesn't want him to be like this. Rouge and Omega's presence within the story, them just being there, is, you know, solidification of that he has friends, that he has people in his life that care about him. It is literally what's alluded to in the second episode of Shadow the Dark Beginnings. Shadow meets up with Omega and Rouge at the gun base. Those are his friends, those are his homies. Why do we not have side quests with them? Why is it that they don't really do much? I mean, at the very least, Rouge has a purpose within the story. She's kind of like the one kind of egging Shadow on, like, dude, how could you have possibly lost to Sonic? What's going on? And okay, well, I'm the one that's gonna be doing the replacing with the Emerald, so, you know, do what you gotta do, but we gotta get a move on, because he's, you know, she's the one keeping us up to date with what's happening on the other side. So that's fine, that's cool. But Omega, not even a voice line. Omega gets basically nothing, and that's super strange to me, considering the fact that Omega has one of the sickest robot designs in the entirety of the franchise. I don't care what anybody says, I am in love with Omega's design. I love that character, and I love what he means to Shadow. One of the best pieces of writing in 06 is Shadow's entire story, and the fact that Omega has actually kind of, he has like a development situation going on his end, thinking like, you know, I was actually designed to destroy you because you become a threat in the future. And Shadow's like, okay, but you know, that's not you now, you know who I am. And Omega's like, yeah, we homies like that, I wouldn't do that to you. And he even fights Mephiles with Shadow in the future. These two have a very solid connection, and I love that about them. I've always loved that about their relationship, that they have this kind of mostly unspoken relationship with each other, where they have each other's backs. And they did nothing with Omega, man. Dang, bro. Like, I feel like they just could have done more with him. Again, I do feel like they also could have done a little more with Rouge, at the very least giving us a mini game with her or something. But I really specifically feel that way more so with Omega, because Omega popped in and that was it. He was there solely to be an NPC for dialogue. That is it. That makes sense for Big, somewhat, sorta, not really, but not Omega. Not somebody that is actively present in Shadow's life. I don't know, I just feel that's a little frustrating. But that just about wraps it up for that. Again, let's not get it twisted, I love Shadow Generations for what it is. However, there were a lot of things that it could have done more of, and there's a lot of things here that kind of hold it back from being the absolute peak of peak. And you know, the fact that we got all of this incredible writing that led up to the story and there was just not as much payoff as we were hoping in some aspects. It's just a little unfortunate, you know. We could have seen Abe around, you know, that would have been really cool to see the colonel or the general, whatever, you know, doing his thing. Maybe, you know, him having a conversation or two with Shadow. He could have been a cool rival fight too. Maybe he's using a gun helicopter or something. He could be using a gun machine. He could be using the gun robot, that robot that we fought at the beginning of SA2. I don't know. I just feel like there was a lot of missed opportunities, and that's the only thing that sucks, right? And it's one of those things that you don't really think too much about until you actively look for it, you know. And these are things that I did have to admittedly actively look for. It doesn't get in the way of Shadow Generations as a game as it is. The game is still phenomenal. It's still a good time. I would absolutely recommend it to anybody that is even remotely interested in the Sonic franchise, or specifically Shadow the Hedgehog as a character. They did a phenomenal job with this, and I'm sure maybe it was a time crunch thing, maybe there was more that they wanted to do, but they simply didn't have enough time. Okay, fine, cool, whatever. I still would have definitely loved it, though, if they pulled what they're pulling with the Keanu Reeves movie Shadow DLC and just give us a little bit more. We're getting a level with Tokyo. Who knows what that DLC pack is going to entail. But I would be super, super duper glad, super happy with the idea of them actively giving us DLC packs and things like that for Sonic Generations, giving us that Omega fight or that, you know, Omega side quests or anything like that, giving us that Abe fight or, you know, his side quest or whatever, giving us some more levels on the base generation side, you know, some more levels from Sonic Rush, from Sonic and the Black Knight, Sonic and the Secret Rings, just more. There's definitely a lot that they could have done, and there's still a lot that they could do. If they're gonna do it, absolutely beyond me. I'm not really gonna hold my breath. Knowing them, they are going full steam ahead with Sonic Frontiers 2, all hands on deck, because they have learned their lesson about separating their teams to make smaller projects. I think that they've learned their lesson by now. So I feel like that's where we're headed. You know, the game is what it is, and I'm happy with it as it is. But these are just some things that I just felt I had to acknowledge. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy for that. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that does officially do it for that one. So obviously I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to you guys, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below. Do you think that all of these missing aspects are kind of interesting? You would have liked to see a lot of these things implemented into the base game of Shadow Generations? You would have loved to see some more rival fights with Infinite and Omega and things like that, maybe with Emerl? Or are you on the opposing side of things? Shadow Generations absolutely needed none of that, and it is not a problem that we didn't get these things because the game is absolutely perfect. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I am always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, yeah, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I would like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gonzo. Thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor, taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky. Battle goes wherever I am. I say fuck it. I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky. Honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky. Get the club popped off like pins. I say fuck it. I don't know.